Hey, what's going on, you guys? Jordan over here at the Movie Den. I hope you all are doing well. So guys, today's video, what I want to talk about is we're going to continue our series of going over the different genres, subgenres of horror, and doing a retrospective and appreciation of said genre. So today what I want to talk about is body horror, especially with all the awards and the popularity of The Substance. You know, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's overhyped, it's the best film in the world, you know, whatever your opinion on it is, you cannot help but appreciate that a movie such as this, a body horror movie, really at its core, is getting all this recognition, especially a movie like this, which is heavily body horror inspired. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into our topic about body horror.
Humans are such easy prey.
But first, let's go ahead and let's define body horror so we can kind of have a baseline of what we're talking about. So I'm on Urban Dictionary right here. So it's a genre for film, books, comics, etc., in which the main feature is the graphically depicted destruction or degeneration of a human body or bodies. Which some of these movies, yeah, it can get pretty crazy. Now, body horror as it pertains to film in general, and I'm talking film across history, is fairly new to a degree, especially as we see it today. But of course, you know, there are early examples of like Kirk Newman's The Original, The Fly. It might not be like the crazy, grotesque, stomach-churning body horror that we all know today, but in a nutshell, this really is a body horror movie. But of course, true body horror, as we would consider it today, really didn't start until about the mid-70s with movies like Rabid and Shivers, which ironically both were David Cronenberg films, which if you think about it, Cronenberg was really the push or the start of what we see as body horror today. But let's go back even further, and I would even consider films as early as the 30s, like Frankenstein.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Is technically a body horror film. Now, it's not, like I had said, what you typically would think as modern day body horror, but this one, it really is. You have Dr. Frankenstein who's trying to create life from body parts from people who have died. He's a grave robber and they're stealing body parts to create Frankenstein. That is body horror, but we can even take it a step further and go back even further to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein novel from 1818. That is a body horror novel in of itself. But for the sake of this video, I want to stick to films and not dive into literature because yes, there is body horror literature and that goes way further back than obviously what we get with film. Now, you see, the thing with body horror is I've said this in the past with other genres of horror. Body horror can sometimes blur the lines between genres of horror. For example, you have movies like The Void, which is a body horror movie, but it also dips its toe into a little bit of like occult horror. So you have examples like that. And also, we already talked about this, but The Substance, you know, you've got kind of a drama, I guess, in a way, but also a very, very heavily body horror movie. Now, looking back, body horror has always kind of, I guess, best way I would describe it is the redheaded stepchild of horror genres. You know, and it could be because it can be too grotesque at times that, you know, a lot of people either one can't stomach it or think it's just gross and they don't want to see it, which, you know, if you're in that camp, I understand this can be an acquired taste. However, there of course are films that kind of broke the mold and got pushed out there a little further in popularity, like Cronenberg's 1986 remake of The Fly with Jeff Goldblum in it. And I think this has to do with not only Jeff Goldblum, but you also had people like Gina Davis in this, which were big stars and pushed this movie in front of more audiences than, let's say, you know, Shivers or Society or, you know, movies like that. And you could say that's also why The Substance got pushed out so far. You know, not to mention, of course, Demi Moore's fantastic performance in this movie, but you also had like Dennis Quaid was in this movie. You had some big name actors in this, but that just goes to show you that even though body horror as a whole has never been widely accepted as, let's say, slashers, because, you know, slashers in the 80s was all the rage. There were still a few that kind of broke through, like I said, The Substance and Cronenberg's The Fly. Now, I kind of want to take a step back and look at what the future holds for body horror, right? Because one would think, well, hey, The Substance came out and it won Golden Globes, it won awards. That's got to push these companies to maybe want to maybe invest more in the body horror genre moving forward because of that, which very well could be. I'm not saying it won't. However, looking back, I really don't see that happening. Like, for examples like The Fly, right? I'm just not sure that The Substance, and I keep talking about The Substance because that's obviously the most recent one. I don't think that gave the body horror genre enough legs to get up and run and go far with this genre. I think it's kind of going to stay where it's at. You're going to have gems here and there with this genre, but just in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, you guys might differ on this, but in my opinion, it's just kind of a niche horror subgenre, which just because it's niche doesn't mean I don't like it. I love this genre. That's just kind of as a whole. I even know some horror fans that body horror is really not their bag. So that's kind of my retrospective of body horror. I know it wasn't as informative going over, you know, throughout the decades or throughout the years of this movie came out, then this movie came out, which in turn caused this movie to, you know, just because there's not a lot written about body horror. Obviously it's a massive genre for a niche market. It just hasn't done a lot in the grand scheme of the horror genre. It definitely has its influences, of course. But what I wanted to do is kind of go over some of my favorites and maybe just talk about them for a little bit with you guys. This first one, definitely, it's one of my favorites in my collection, and I have this Criterion release of The Brood. Now, this is a Cronenberg film, and what I like about this Criterion release, too, is in the special features, you are getting the original Crimes of the Future. So you're kind of getting two movies in one in a way. Now, I'm not saying Crimes of the Future is the greatest movie out there. It is pretty weird. There's no dialogue or anything like that. Even the audio is, it's almost a silent film, but they add in audio that's not even caught live on the set, if that makes any sense. But guys, I'm so happy that Second Sight is putting this out. This is a really, really good film. And of course, if you guys seen this movie, that ending is just wild with the sack and just the grossness of it. Body horror, right? Another one of my favorites as well is, this is a Stuart Gordon film, and we've got From Beyond. Now, this is the 88 Films release. I don't have the Vinegar Syndrome one, but I got to say, I prefer this one. And excellent, excellent film. And this just gets me more excited for the Reanimator 4K box set that's supposed to be coming out here pretty soon. But this is another great one. Deals with the whole H.P. Lovecraftian storyline and the body horror all over this movie. I mean, heck, you can even see it right there in the cover art. And of course, any of these movies that I show you right here, they'll be linked down below for you guys to check out. Another awesome body horror movie, which I don't have a physical copy of because there isn't one, is The Void. That movie is phenomenal. And that's the one I talked about earlier. That's kind of that body horror, but occult horror as well, kind of tied into one. It's an excellent movie. If you guys haven't seen it, you guys need to check it out. I can't remember where I streamed it. I want to say it was Prime, but I'll list it down below where you guys can stream The Void. And again, Second Sight, that just seems right up their alley. It looks like it was tailored for Second Sight. So I'd love to see them dive into that. Maybe this year will be the year of body horror for Second Sight. I don't know. And the last one that I have of my favorite body horror movies that I personally own is Cronenberg's 1986, The Fly with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Phenomenal movie. I already talked about this, one of my favorite movies of the 80s in terms of horror. In my opinion, Jeff Goldblum's best performance out there. You know, I'm not a big fan of his, but this movie, he does a phenomenal job. And again, I know I keep talking about Second Sight. The only reason I say that is because they are diving into the body horror genre yet again with The Brood and Scanners. So they're just kind of on my radar right now with this subgenre of horror. And The Fly in 4K with Second Sight would be phenomenal. Unfortunately, we just have it on Blu-ray, and this is the Scream Factory one that's in that nice box set. But this is another body horror film that I absolutely love. Cronenberg does it again with this one. Love his stuff. But guys, that is the video. Again, I'm going to be linking all these down below if you guys want to check out or pick up any of these for yourself. You will see some links to the movie room. If you guys go there, make sure to use my coupon code MovieDen10, and that'll get you a one-time 10% off with them over there on any of the movies that you want to pick up. But guys, like I said, that is going to be my kind of retrospective 10,000 foot view of body horror. You know, I forgot to mention this earlier. I would recommend, if you have the Shudder app, there's a series on there called Eli Roth's History of Horror. And in there is an episode all about body horror. And it just goes from the very beginning to basically today. Excellent series on Shudder and especially on body horror. If you guys want to learn more, definitely check that out if you do have the Shudder app. Oh, and that reminds me, Thanksgiving, another great body horror film. That one, you know, it kind of blurs the line between slasher and body horror, but still a great film nonetheless. I'm rambling at this point. But anyways, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys have a good one. And of course, you all take care.